At the center of every great dynasty is the crown jewel, which keeps it alive and thriving. For the Krusty Krab, this is the Krabby Patty. And now you, the humble employee off the street, the all-too-necessary human resource that keeps this business afloat.
To be honest, I knew about this problem for many years now, but only realized its full extent and how detrimental it has been to the gaming industry as a whole when the Veilguard came out. For context, I was previously a massive fan of many of the honestly shields for Dragon Age the Veilguard and BioWare. And even though I hate the word, there is frankly no better way to describe them and what they did for BioWare at the time. I even talked about it back then as well and mentioned how unethical this behavior is in general.
If you haven't pre-ordered yet, make sure to use my code KaylaElizabeth to give me a tiny kickback at no extra cost to you.
And if you are looking to pre-order Veilguard or purchase any of the Dragon Age games on the EA app, why not throw in the code GIL during checkout? I'll get a small kickback from it, and while it is not a coupon code, you do get the peace of mind that a small percent of your money is going to help pay my rent and not another CEO's facelift.
So I don't understand people who say that reviewers were not paid, because how is that not paying them? As you have already guessed, I am of course talking about paid reviews for games. It is a downright sneaky and cunning move on the studio's part, and an even worse, sly, sneaky and conniving move on the influencers' part who accept to do this for these studios in the first place. We already knew how awful access journalism is and how prevalent this problem is in that field in general, which is why YouTube reviewers and social media influencers in the gaming sphere were our alternatives. An alternative, however, which can no longer be relied upon either, since this madness seems to have taken root here as well. So let's go over the different kinds of paid game reviews we've seen, why they are a problem, and what we can do to avoid this in the future. Some developers either have no faith in their game, or they know their game will not be able to generate good reviews on its own, or a combination of these two reasons, and think, hey, why don't I treat this as a service and pay some random people, or sometimes even bots, to sing my game's praises and generate some artificial hype? Which just... why? How does that even make sense to you? First of all, the quality of this type of reviews is always so abysmal, you can almost always tell it's a paid one and not one made by an actual person who sat down and played the game itself. And even if you do manage to fool someone into buying your game, the review they will leave will be even worse, because not only will they not enjoy your fake hype game, but they will immediately catch on to the fact that the positive reviews are most likely paid ones and will then proceed to add that in the reviews as well. This is so bad that if you Google paid reviews, you literally get ads and results for paid review services. It is just that accessible and easy to arrange. So even beloved platforms like Steam cannot be entirely relied upon or trusted when it comes to their reviews anymore. There have even been instances where Steam itself was caught deleting negative reviews, which is equally bad, if not worse. And even if Steam itself didn't do it, it still allowed the devs of the game to do it, which is still bad. Because someone who paid for the game, played it, hated or just disliked it, and thought they just give people their 2 cents on the game, is deemed a bad person and the review invalid because they didn't like your game, I guess? Unless the review is disrespectful or violates a rule or something, then why are you deleting it? Because someone dared not like your game? That is just pathetic. And once again, this is pointless because people quickly catch on what you're doing, and your, as well as your game's reputation, plummets even further. So what's the point? And devs get so obsessed with these positive reviews and their games having only positive reviews. I've even seen game devs themselves crash out on social media about how a review site is much better than another one just because their game has better reviews on that other site which was just another sad display of game devs somehow considering bad reviews as an insult, I guess, for some reason. I get you know, having worked on something for so long that you yourself feel it's perfect due to the sheer amount of work you've put into it, but that doesn't mean that everyone will like it. A lot of factors contribute to our preferences. Why can't you take said negative reviews as constructive criticism for the future and your future games, or just ignore them? Trying to trick and deceive people into believing your game is just this perfect piece of art with zero flaws is not a good look or idea for that matter. Artificial hype generates artificial success, and that is just not sustainable or viable long term. If you thought things just can't get more pathetic and sad than seeing a studio buy positive reviews, then think again, because things can get much worse and pathetic than that. I'm of course talking about sponsorships, early access, and influencer marketing. Think of it as basically what Dragon Age the Veilguard did. They paid for the reviewers' trips, gave them early access to the game, and even had some of their ambassadors review the game, aka people who were promised a portion of the game's sales if the people they convinced to buy their game used their usernames as codes upon checking out. So obviously, those people would sing the game's praises so as to get as many people as possible to buy the game and thus enjoy that promised piece of the pie. So here's a real question. How do you, as a studio or publisher, expect an unbiased and honest review from someone you basically tell, hey, here's a paid-for trip to come play the game earlier. Oh, and here's a code your victims can use so we can identify how many people you managed to fool, and based on those numbers, you will enjoy part of the profits as well.
I need 40.
My guess is you weren't expecting that. In fact, that's exactly why you got those specific people to be the first ones to review your game, so as to trick as many people as possible into buying the game before the cat is out of the bag, after which point nobody will be able to be talked into buying your game because videos, memes, and all kinds of clips from your game will be out in the wild and thus out of your control. So I guess from a quote-unquote villain's point of view, it does make sense to want to convince people to buy your game before they see what it is truly like. Why is that allowed? Or legal, for that matter? I simply do not know or understand. I'm not really a, oh my god, big corporations are to blame for literally everything type of person either, even though, ironically enough, this type of paid content creators usually are this type of people who blame big corpos for everything, yet somehow are complicit and just fine with taking money from said corpos and helping them deceive people. So these ambassadors have no moral qualms about fooling their longtime fans either, so they are as, if not more, despicable and morally reprehensible, if not bankrupt, for accepting to essentially fool other fans of the game who also happen to be fans of theirs into buying a game they almost certainly know most of said fans wouldn't like anyway. What is even worse is when these reviewers get the much deserved backlash for this type of behavior and then immediately start backtracking and backpedaling, saying things like, what? I too always thought the game was flawed and it wasn't just perfect. What do you mean? Essentially gaslighting their fans or readers, if we're talking about big gaming sites, about the instrumental role they played in this deception. And I think Dragon Age the Veilguard was the perfect example of how bad this tactic is, as the problem with Veilguard specifically was twofold, as most of these ambassadors were supposedly super fans of the franchise, so much so that they were even asked for their opinions on the game. They were also asked for feedback as the game was developing, were also privy to the behind-the-scenes development of the game itself, and so on. So when fans asked these ambassadors after the game came out, hey, if you're supposedly such a big fan of the franchise and are one of us, how did you even greenlight this and all these changes and thought that the rest of us would somehow like all of this? To which their responses ranged from, "What? Of course we all liked it, what do you mean? If you didn't, then you're just racist, a bigot, or some type of phobic, and never was a real fan of the game in the first place." Or silence, aka ignoring any and all criticism coming your way by deleting comments, blocking people, and so on. And of course, there were also those who played both sides, singing the game's praises at first, and then saying, "Yeah, my contributions weren't that many, and also there are indeed some flaws in the game, now that I think about it again."
I don't want to hear another word. You're a disgrace to the game, Yugi.
This type of tactics are popular because we've allowed them to be popular and effective. I allowed this as well, as I had been following many of these Bioware YouTubers ever since I was in school, and thus subscribed to all the new YouTubers that came along as well, until Dragon Age: The Veilguard came around and the masks were off. You could suddenly tell very clearly who was in this because of the access they got to the industry and the money they were promised as ambassadors. The reviews were all shining reviews with no flaws until people started calling them out, and they started deleting comments, blocking people who dared call them out on their behavior and integrity, and some even backtracked and re-edited the reviews in an effort to be seen in a more positive light. Which is exactly why this type of behavior is not only bad for business, but for your own reputation as well, as the game, studio, publisher, and now influencers too are forever tarnished and known for this conniving deception of theirs. This has happened to other fandoms with other YouTubers as well, who did something similar. So there is some good news here, because people are starting to wake up, and this is exactly how we stop this. As with everything else in life that you want to change, you first have to realize that it is a bad thing before you can start resisting and eventually changing it for the better. So while as a practice it can theoretically give you some short-term boost to sales initially, long-term it does way more damage to your reputation, credibility, and honestly, character as well. Nobody is going to trust any of these people, studios, publishers, and so on, ever again in the future. So, is it really worth it? In my opinion, no. And that is the beauty of this tactic, because its consequences are intrinsically linked to the action itself. No matter how much they try to then convince us that the consequences are an unrelated event, or a product of hatred or bigotry or whatever, they have nobody else to blame but themselves, and their choice to just outright deceive people for some money, prestige, and access to the industry. So they can literally only do this once, and then the jig is up after that, as people will naturally be more skeptical of them and their reviews going forward. So all we have to do essentially is realize it is happening and start resisting it. After you do notice that, my advice would be to be your own reviewer. Watch some gameplay before you buy the game and keep a close eye on the controversies surrounding said game, because let's face it, every game that comes out has to go hand in hand with some kind of controversy that we will either deem illogical or absolutely understandable nowadays. Many consider God of War's controversy understandable, for example. I didn't, and I got the game nonetheless and loved it as well. Many think we should support Ghost of Yotei, since art should be separated from the artist, and that the mistake of 1% of the devs shouldn't mean we don't buy the game altogether. My moral compass, however, disagreed, and thus I didn't buy the game, nor do I ever plan to. In other words, do not rely nor wait for someone you happen to follow online to tell you whether you should or shouldn't buy a game. Instead, take in all the info regarding the game yourself and decide whether it is something you like and or want to support for yourself. So whether a studio and or publisher decides to use any of these conniving tactics, they will all lead to their demise. Focusing on your short-term desire to be perceived as an excellent developer or publisher with an excellent and flawless game in order to acquire some quick fame and monetary gain will hinder your future long-term success, as well as goal to be an actually excellent developer and publisher with actually excellent games. I feel like studios and publishers developers are so focused on marketing and the optics of the game that they have forgotten about the greatest marketing strategy of them all, making and offering an incredible product that people will genuinely love so much that word of mouth alone will make your game into a massive overnight success. If your game is good, then there is no need to bribe and compromise people with seemingly no moral compass or a sense of accountability to fool your customers into buying your product, nor will you need to spend extra money on fake reviews to once again try and fool people. Make the product good and let it do all the marketing work for you. Look at Expedition 33. That game seemingly came out of the blue with a minimal advertising campaign, but still managed to sell 4.4 million copies just because people loved it so much. This can work for studios as well. Look at Larian. Everyone knows and loves them for all their games. Owlcat is another example. I have personally never played their previous games, but I am interested in their upcoming Expanse game. And I have heard nothing but good things about the studio from their longtime fans because of their amazing work. In other words, actions speak louder than any fake parroting words coming out of any bought-out swindler's mouth ever will. So just focus on making good games, and the fame, success, and yes, even profit will come naturally without you having to compromise and decimate your reputation, integrity, and character along the way. And this holds true for both studios and the content creators who choose to sell themselves out in such a degrading and frankly shameful way.
The more you around, the more you're going to find out.